Hello everybody. So today, if you have obviously a broadband service in the UK, then you will have an engineer coming round to fit full fibre. So if you didn't originally have full fibre, then now you'll be changed over to full fibre, if that makes sense, because BT are no longer maintaining the copper wires, which yes is a bit silly in my opinion. So here's what to expect. So when you had a copper service, if your wire came over the telegraph pole, then the full fibre wire will continue to come over the telegraph pole. This is because BT are not as stupid as Virgin Media and don't have to dig up your garden unless you originally had copper coming underground or fibre coming underground if you had a part fibre service. So yeah. Another thing is you'll have one of these on your property. So if your original cable just went straight through into your property, then when they fit the full fibre, they will usually fit one of these, which is called a CSP, which stands for Customer Splice Point, I believe. So the cable will go into there, go back up for us anyway, and then it'll go into the house. You might have already had one of these. If I can, I'll put one on the screen of what you might have already had when you had the copper service. But yeah. Another change that will happen is instead of having your traditional master socket on the wall, you will have one of these, which is called an ONT, which stands for Optical Networking Terminal. So what this does, there's a fibre optic cable there, which goes outside through that little circle. Then there's that red Ethernet cable, which will go into the back of your router. But then just note that the ONT does require power from the mains, which is a bit silly in my opinion. Sorry, I can't get it in focus. A bit silly in my opinion, because it is just a waste of a socket. You could be using that socket for much better reasons than some piece of plastic that BT supplied you. But if that's what BT wants, BT don't make very good decisions anymore, so yeah. Another change that will happen is you'll have... Sorry, I can't... Right, that's not going to work. Right, I'm just going to have to blur it out. What? Right, another change that will happen is your router will be changed to one of these. If you already had one of these with your copper service, your router will not need to be changed, as these are compatible with digital voice. But if you had this router, the BT Smart Hub A, that I'm showing on the screen now, you will be changed to one of these, which is called a BT Smart Hub 2. Another change that will happen is these extension sockets, well, there used to be one here, I unscrewed it myself, but the extension sockets that are on your wall will no longer work. BT might take them out, or they might leave them. It depends well, not on much, but sometimes they just leave them on the wall, sometimes they take them out. So if you have multiple telephones around the house that are not like a set of phones, for example, like a BT cordless set of phones that automatically links to the base, you are going to need to purchase something called a BT digital home phone adapter, or an EE digital home phone adapter, which will then you'll link it to the router using the WPS button, and then you will plug it into wherever you want your telephone to plug in, and then that gives the telephone signal, if that makes sense. I can't get my words out properly, but to the adapter, and then you just plug your telephone into the green phone port on the adapter, and then you'll have access to the landline. Again, it isn't very good, so do try and keep your copper service for as long as you possibly can, because it is a lot better than full fibre. So yeah. So another change that will be happening is, instead of plugging your telephone into the master socket, you obviously can't do that because the master socket is no longer there. You don't plug it into the ONT, you actually plug it into this. So there's this sticker, and when you, as you can see, it says digital voice customers only. BT, well, sometimes BT will take that sticker off, so you know where to plug your phone in. But sometimes BT are really lazy and don't take off that sticker, so it'll leave you really confused, and that's why I'm making this video. So yeah, I don't have anything to show you for this, but if you had a BT PlusNet or Vodafone service with a copper network, the dial tone might be a bit different on digital voice, which you're probably thinking there's no point in raising that, letting everyone know, because nobody really notices. But your dial tone will go from this to this. Some people might think there's no difference, but I see the difference. But if you had a TalkTalk service, a Sky service, a Premier Talk service, a utility warehouse service, any other services other than BT, EE, PlusNet and Vodafone, then your dial tone will be the same when you switch over to digital voice as well, as it always was, so if that makes sense. So yeah. Another thing to expect is the speed on your broadband will be a lot, well, you'd think it's a lot faster, but it's really not. When we recently got switched over to digital voice, well, not digital voice, but full fibre, because we don't have the landline. But the broadband speed, when we did a speed test, it was quite a bit higher, but it's a lot more glitchy, and it's just really not worth it. So at this point, you don't. In my opinion, you should keep your copper service for as long as you possibly can. So when BT messages you and says this is the date they're going to arrive, if you're not ready for it to become digital, just reply back and say, I'm busy on that day, or I'll be busy for a while, and then they'll think of a different date and just carry on doing that, I guess. But yeah, so that's basically what to expect from your digital voice service. If you have a telecare alarm, plug it into the back of your hub like your normal telephone would, and if it does not work, ring BT or contact your service provider as soon as possible. If it doesn't work, they should be tested regularly to make sure they're working up to the standard. So yeah, that's basically what to expect. So yeah.